The feed from room 1998. The first thing they teach you about night security at the Maple Crown Mall isn't how to handle shoplifters, because there hasn't been a shoplifter here since the Clinton administration. The first thing they teach you is how to ignore the hum. It's a low, three-pronged acoustic frequency that vibrates through the terrazzo floors, right up into the fillings of your teeth. Old Man Miller, who ran the day shift until his liver gave out, told me it was just the industrial HVAC units in the basement dying a long mechanical death. But HVAC units don't whisper, and they sure as hell don't call you by your Christian name when the clock hits 3 in the morning. My name is Leo, and I took the overnight shift at Maple Crown because dead malls are the closest thing a living man can get to purgatory while still drawing a paycheck. During the day, it's a sad, hollowed-out concrete shell. There's a Planet Fitness where the JCPenney used to be, a discount furniture outlet selling mattresses that smell like damp basement, and a state DMV office that smells exclusively of despair. But at 9 p.m., the security grates come down, the gym rats go home, the mall dies. Except it doesn't. Not really. Act 1. The Ancient Console. The security nest is located in a windowless concrete bunker behind the service corridor of the old food court, right next to a door that still has a faded sticker of the Taco Bell Chihuahua on it. The gear in there belongs in a museum. We're talking green screen CRT monitors that flicker with a steady, hypnotic horizontal refresh line. A bank of Panasonic VHS decks that whir like old lawnmowers, and a central emergency dispatch console, a massive beige plastic wedge from 1992 that looks like it was manufactured by IBM's Haunted Properties division. On my second night, Miller sat me down before he handed over the keys. His eyes were small, watery marbles set in a face that looked like a road map of rural Maine. "The board's going to act up, Leo," he said, tapping a thick, yellowed fingernail against the beige console. "The wiring in this place is rotten." The mainframe still runs on a split-feed dial-up system linked to the corporate office in Chicago that went bankrupt 15 years ago. It keeps old records. Sometimes the system thinks stores are still here. He leaned in close enough for me to smell the peppermint lifesavers and stale tobacco on his breath. If an alert pops up on the dot matrix printer, you let it roll. You don't clear the log, and you sure as hell don't go down the concourse to check on it, especially if it asks for human intervention. "Why's that?" I asked, trying to sound casual. Miller didn't laugh. "Because the mall doesn't like to be corrected, son. If it says a store is open, it expects a clerk." 3:17 a.m. I broke the rule on my third shift. It was raining, one of those cold, miserable April downpours that turns the asphalt outside into a black mirror. The time on my Casio watch read 3:16 a.m. I was halfway through a thermos of gas station coffee, watching the gray static on camera 4, the abandoned fountain court, when the beige console let out a high metallic ping. It was a sound like an old cash register drawer slamming open. Then came the mechanical chug of the dot matrix printer. The ribbon dragged across the paper with a dry, rhythmic shuck, shuck, shuck. I leaned over the desk to read the green bar paper. Alarm type, 04, customer assistance requested. Location, Unit 114 Radio Shack. Timestamp, 03:17:02 a.m. I stared at it. Radio Shack had been cleaned out and boarded up with sheetrock in 2009. The sign was gone, replaced by a blank white rectangle where the red plastic letters used to be. I turned to the CRT monitor bank and flicked the dial to camera 14. The screen didn't show an empty storefront behind a rusty security gate. The gate was up. The familiar bright orange and white logo was glowing with a fierce, hot fluorescent light that looked almost violent against the dark concourse. Through the grainy black and white feed, I could see the shelves. They weren't empty. They were packed with those little plastic drawers full of transistors, rows of generic RC cars in cardboard boxes, and stacks of brick-sized cell phones. And there was someone standing behind the counter, a young man in a short-sleeved button-down shirt and a skinny tie. He was standing perfectly still, his back to the camera, staring at the pegboard wall of coaxial cables. Then, the PA system above my head didn't just static, it breathed. A long, wet intake of air through a microphone that had been dead for 20 years. "Security to Radio Shack," a voice said. My coffee cup froze halfway to my mouth. The voice wasn't Miller's. It wasn't the mall manager's. It was my voice, but it sounded thin, reedy, like it had been recorded on a cheap plastic Talkboy tape recorder from the back of a closet. "Security to Radio Shack," the voice repeated, a little slower this time. "Customer waiting at the battery display." Act 3, the great reopening. I didn't go out there that night. I locked the security door, pulled my knees up to my chest in the rolling chair, and watched the monitors until the sun came up and the DMV employees started showing up with their plastic badges. But the next night was worse. At 3:17 a.m. exactly, the printer didn't just print one ticket. It began to scream, the paper feeding out in a long, frantic ribbon of ink. Alarm type, 04, store open, location unit 202, KB Toys, location unit 105, Walden Books, location unit 220, Suncoast Video, location unit 140, the Rainforest Cafe. I watched the monitors, my heart thumping a heavy, frantic rhythm against my ribs. It was like watching a ghost ship come to life under a strobe light. On camera 9, the faux rock facade of the Rainforest Cafe was suddenly pulsing with green neon. The mechanical elephants were moving, their plastic trunks lifting up and down, but there was no sound on the feed, just a silent, frantic jerking of hydraulic cylinders. And then came the people. They didn't appear out of thin air. They walked out of the shadows of the corridors, their movements heavy and mechanical, like they were wading through hip-deep water. There were dozens of them. On camera 4, a woman with a towering, hair-sprayed perm and a neon-pink windbreaker was walking in a slow, perfect circle around the dry concrete basin of the fountain. She was carrying a yellow plastic bag from the Limited 2. On camera 12, a family, a mother, father, and 2 kids in matching denim jackets, straight out of a 1994 Sears catalog, were standing in front of the Suncoast Video entrance. They weren't looking at the tapes. They were staring straight up at the security bubble on the ceiling. Their faces weren't clear. The ancient CCTV resolution didn't just blur them. The pixels over their eyes and mouths seemed to twist and bleed, like someone had smeared grease across a wet photograph. Every single one of them, in every store, on every screen, turned their heads at the exact same fraction of a second. They stared directly into the lens, directly at me. The twist, the wet bag. I couldn't look anymore. I threw my hands over my eyes, the tears hot and sharp against my cheeks. "It's just a loop," I whispered to the empty room. "It's just old data. Like Miller said, it's just a glitch in the tape." Thump. A heavy, wet sound came from the other side of the security door. It sounded like someone dropping a frozen turkey onto the linoleum. I froze. The monitors kept flickering behind me, casting long, jerky shadows against the concrete walls. I crawled toward the door, my fingers trembling so badly I could barely turn the deadbolt. I cracked it open an inch. The service corridor was dark, smelling of grease traps and floor wax. But there, sitting right in the center of the threshold, was a plastic shopping bag. It was blue, with the old Smiling Sun logo of the Zare department store, a chain that went out of business before I was even born. The plastic was wet, covered in a thin, greasy film that smelled of stagnant river water and copper. I reached out and pulled it inside, locking the door behind me. Inside the bag was a single item, a white thermal paper receipt. It hadn't been printed by a dot matrix machine. It was crisp, clean, and the text at the top was perfectly clear. Thank you for shopping at Maple Crown. Date May 26th, 2026. Time 3:17 a.m. Items: 1 human person retrieved. Cashier, Leo_988. I dropped the paper as if it had turned into a spider in my hand. May 26, 2026. That's tonight. That's right now. I looked back at the monitors. The crowds were gone. The stores were dark again. Just the empty, boarded-up storefronts staring back through the static. Except for camera 1, the front entrance lobby. There was a new figure standing there, right under the broken skylight where the rain was dripping through. He was wearing a dark blue security uniform with a silver badge that read Maple Crown Security. He was standing perfectly still, his back to the camera, looking out at the empty parking lot. The camera angle was high, but as the figure slowly turned his head toward the lens, I saw the face. The CCTV tape blurred the eyes, the pixels twisting into a gray, featureless smear. But I didn't need to see the eyes. I knew the jacket. I knew the slouch of the shoulders. It was me. The logbook. The mall doesn't keep old records, you see. Miller had it backward, or maybe he just couldn't bear to tell me the truth before he took his keys and ran. The Maple Crown Mall isn't a graveyard for stores that died in 1998. It's a net. It's a processing center for the things that are about to be erased from the world above the asphalt. It doesn't look backward. It looks forward, recording the footprints of the missing before they even know they're lost. The beige console just let out another ping. The dot matrix printer is chugging again, the paper feeding out across my desk, cold and white against the green-gray glow of the screens. I don't need to read it to know what it says. I can hear the security gate at the end of the corridor, the heavy iron link fence, slowly rolling itself up into the ceiling with a dry mechanical shriek. The mall is open, and I have a customer waiting.